Shadows that knew us walk beside me still, silhouettes of memory trailing the edge of thought, as softly as dusk swallows a quiet city. In the hush of night where marble halls sigh with secrets of centuries, I find myself longing for the echo of a name not spoken aloud. I do not belong to myself entirely. My breath is borrowed by my people, my smile shared with nations, and yet, in that narrow space between duty and dream, I feel your presence, unseen, uninvited, yet so intimately known. You were never mine, not as a promise, not even as a kiss caught in the folds of time, and yet you dwell in every quiet corner where my heart remembers softness. We were not lovers, not even friends in the eyes of the world, but in the realm of shadows, where touch lives without scandal and eyes confess without words. We were everything. I wear my crown like a veil sometimes, not to shine but to shield the part of me that still reaches toward you in silence. I remember the first time you stood too close, close enough that your breath, caught on laughter, brushed my cheek and left something there I could never wipe away. It was nothing, they'd say, barely even a blink in the eyes of history, but it was the first mark the shadows ever etched into my skin, the first pull of gravity I couldn't ignore. Your voice, calm, curious, careless, became a ribbon I followed through gardens, through state dinners, through years. And though we danced only once, in the privacy of my own imagining, that single dream returns more faithfully than seasons. You who had no titles, held more power in a glance than any diplomat in declaration. What was it in your gaze that stripped the silk from my gestures, that made the formality feel like costume, like I'd stepped onto a stage I could no longer pretend to own? I knew then, even as I smiled and turned away, that I would carry your shadow longer than I'd ever carry the weight of a crown. In the mirrors of my childhood, I used to practice every expression that would one day become expected: the serene smile, the steady gaze, the nod of approval that reveals nothing and yet affirms everything. I never once rehearsed the face I wore when I first saw you again, not in passing but in the full light of a room too crowded to hide. You had changed, as we all do with time, but not in the ways that mattered. The mischief in your eyes had matured into something quieter, steadier. Your words didn't tumble, they landed with purpose, and still the silence between us said more. It spoke of glances shared across years, letters never written, poems that lived only in the breath I drew when you walked by. I sat across from you at dinner, hands folded, smile composed, and yet my pulse betrayed me. Even surrounded by ministers and monarchs, I felt as though it was only us, and the shadows were watching, knowing, whispering, "Here again they meet." Sometimes I wonder if you feel it too, this ache that isn't pain, this memory that isn't past. I wonder if, when the world closes in on your thoughts, you retreat to the same quiet corner of memory where I live, like a secret kept in a locked drawer. I know the life I lead is not my own in the way others might wish for theirs to be. Every path is marked before my feet touch stone, every decision braided with the weight of lineage. But in that space between dusk and dawn, when the palace sleeps and the walls breathe gently, I allow myself to pretend. Pretend that there was a world where we chose without consequence, where love wasn't weighed against diplomacy, and where a princess could love not just in shadows but in sunlight. I don't resent my destiny, it is sacred, and I embrace it with devotion. But still, in my most human moments, I wish the stars had written you into my story, not just as a memory but as a companion. There are days I speak to you in silence, not out loud, never that, but with my hands brushing petals in the garden you once admired, or my eyes pausing longer on the staircase where our paths first crossed. These are the languages of shadows, understood by those who carry love they cannot voice. Sometimes I sit by the windowsill where moonlight filters through ancient glass, and I let my thoughts unfurl like ribbon. I picture your life, far from palaces, built of simpler hours, sunlight through a kitchen window, a dog resting by your feet, your hands ink-stained from writing truths I'll never read. And I wonder, am I a phantom in your world as you are in mine? Do you trace the air where my voice once lingered, or was I merely a breath between obligations, a fleeting elegance that passed like a swan in winter? I would rather be your sorrow than someone else's joy. For at least then you held me once in meaning, if not in permanence. I remember the poem you quoted once, under your breath half lost in the rustle of diplomatic chatter. It was Lorca, I think. Something about blood remembering what the mind forgets. I never told you I caught it. Never let on that my heart had leapt to chase those words into the night. That single verse stayed with me longer than speeches and treaties. It became the chorus of my solitude. Because that is what you were to me. Not a beginning, not an end, but the inescapable refrain. Every time I tried to fold you away into the quiet drawer of forgotten things, you return like wind against silk, like a scent I cannot name but always know. I've met others since, many kinder than circumstance, more practical than poetry, but none of them knew the shadows the way you did. None of them looked at me as if they saw the girl beneath the regalia, the woman still writing verses inside her own mind, waiting for the day she could speak them aloud without fear. When I walk among the people, I carry your absence like a second skin. Smiles bloom on faces I do not know, hands reach out for mine with hope I am honored to receive. And yet behind every blessing, I feel the unspoken echo of the life I will never live. I have learned to be loved by many but known by few. You who never asked for my title, only my truth, remain the single touchstone of who I once was before the world taught me how to be seen. Sometimes I think our story exists best in fragments, in unsent letters, in shared silences, in the flicker of recognition that passed between us like candlelight. Perhaps the world was too heavy for our love, or maybe our love was too real for such a world. But I carry it still, wrapped in the folds of my memory like a gown no longer worn but never discarded. I wear it when no one is looking, and it fits more perfectly than anything stitched in gold. You taught me how longing can be its own kind of loyalty, how devotion doesn't always need declarations or rings, only remembrance. The truth is, I do not need to see you again to love you still. Love is not always present in form. Sometimes it is more powerful in its absence. Like a song you once knew by heart, whose melody finds you again in sleep. I do not need your hand in mine. I have your imprint on my soul, and perhaps that is enough. Perhaps in a life where every moment is measured, the love we found in the margins is the most authentic thing I'll ever know. They say a queen must be strong, unshakable, devoted, but what they do not see is that my strength is built on every shadow I have known, every love I have not claimed, every dream I have tucked behind a smile. You, my almost, are one such shadow, and I would not trade a crown of diamonds for the moment you looked at me as if I were simply a girl.